Dr. William J. Irwin failed to comply with the appropriate standard of care for an OB/GYN in the year 2007, and as a result, Rebecca Gatti, a newborn baby, suffered severe brain damage which is lifelong and irreversible. Those brutally frank words were how the Louisiana Medical Review Board explained to Ryan and Susan Gaddy, the parents of their new baby girl Rebecca, why Rebecca had suffered irreversible brain damage due to the incompetence of Dr. Irwin, and now will require round-the-clock care for the rest of her life with no chance whatsoever for improvement. Today, the Insider Exclusive will take you behind the headlines of this real-life couple, Ryan and Susan Gaddy, who entrusted their child's health and welfare to this grossly incompetent doctor. We will meet not only the Gaddys, but also their lawyer, John Hammond, partner at Nelson and Hammonds, who for almost 30 years has been one of Louisiana's leading medical malpractice and nursing home negligence lawyers, standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. The Insider Exclusive has learned some hard, cold facts that completely contradict all the myths that insurance companies and their lobbyists have been feeding the public for years regarding medical malpractice cases like the Gaddys and why they falsely claim that caps on med-mal verdicts are necessary. All of these myths, of course, are designed to protect the insurance companies and the doctors' financial interests while victimizing patients' healthcare interests. Here's some of them. The Institute of Medicine's study of preventable medical errors estimate as many as 98,000 people die every year at the cost of $29 billion. A Harvard University study proved 97% of medical negligence claims are actually valid. The Congressional Budget Office reports malpractice costs amount to less than 2% of the overall healthcare spending. The University of Texas, Columbia University, and the University of Illinois all concluded insurance premiums are largely unconnected to med-mal verdicts and settlements. The General Accounting Office investigation concluded med-mal verdicts did not affect insurance premiums or access to health care. In fact, the American Medical Association, as well as the General Accounting Office, found that the ratio of doctors to population is higher in states without caps by 13%. The GAO found premiums in states with caps grew 20% more over states without caps. These are the real facts, not the insurance companies and lobbyists' myths. And these are the facts that will help change Louisiana's unfair and unjust medical malpractice laws to get better justice for victims like Ryan, Susan, and Rebecca Gaddy. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Shreveport, Louisiana, at the law firm of Nelson and Hammonds. It gives me great pleasure to introduce John Hammonds to the show. Welcome to the show, John.
Dave, good to be here. Thank you.
I am, time and time again, so impressed with some of the cases that you handled. We are going to be talking today about the Rebecca Gaddy case,
yes,
who was the newborn infant daughter of Ryan and Sharon Gaddy. Tell us a little bit about the case.
Well, the case involves substandard, in fact, I believe grossly substandard obstetrical care on the part of the Dr. Irwin, who was the obstetrician. In short, this was their third child. The pregnancy had gone fine. It was a full-term infant, no indications of any problem, perfectly healthy baby. She was hospitalized here in Shreveport or in Bossier at Bossier Medical Center. And there was placed on a fetal heart monitor, which is the way that obstetricians and the nursing staff monitor the health of the fetus during the late stages of the pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And in short, there were non-reassuring fetal heart tones, what used to be called fetal distress. But obstetricians didn't like the use of the term fetal distress, so it's now called non-reassuring fetal heart tones.
Kind of complicated there, huh?
Yeah, it's And in a nutshell, he delayed and delayed and delayed in the face of obvious objective indications that the child was not getting adequate oxygen. The result was that the cesarean delivery was prolonged or delayed about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half too long, and the child suffered profound what's called hypoxic ischemic brain damage.
And as a result, the child, this happened in what year?
2007.
So 2 years ago.
Yes.
And we are going to be showing some video of the child today.
Yes.
But what does the child suffer from today? What is the extent of the damage to the child? Rebecca?
This is probably the most profoundly brain damaged patient that I've ever seen. The child was born with 0-0 APGAR scores at 1, 5, and 10 minutes, which means there was absolutely no brain function. The resuscitation efforts really went on for too long, and eventually a heartbeat was reestablished, but by that time the child's frontal lobes were virtually destroyed. So we have a child that has absolutely no cognitive functioning and has no sight, no vision, none of the higher level of
no sight,
no
vision,
it's
nothing. No.
nothing except pain, and the child suffers intense pain from prolonged seizure activity secondary to the brain damage that was caused.
Yeah, we'll see in the video here how the child is suffering from a seizure, but this is a regular occurrence every day?
Routine. I believe it is virtually a daily problem and now requires the family to provide 24-hour close scrutiny of the child at all times.
So basically, she's a vegetable.
That's correct.
Correct.
It's actually worse than that because of the pain. She is a vegetable in the sense that she cannot respond or have interaction with her parents.
Right.
But she's not vegetative from the standpoint of pain because she feels and experiences intense pain, and this goes on all day long, every day.
Like all medical malpractice cases, this had to go before a medical review board, correct?
That's correct.
What was the decision of the board?
In this case, a unanimous panel comprised of 3 obstetricians agreed with the theory or the claim that we put forward and concluded that Dr. Irwin committed multiple acts of medical malpractice that resulted in the brain damage suffered by this child.
And you had mentioned, I think, earlier that only, 2 or 4% of the cases that go before the review board are decided in favor of the victim, correct?
Now it's about 10%,
Yeah.
but that's all.
Now, in a case like this, Dr. Irwin, he's still practicing medicine?
That's right, not in Shreveport anymore, but in South Louisiana.
And what is the discipline that the medical board can do to this doctor?
Well,
I mean, this was pretty gross, wasn't it?
I believe so, and I certainly think that the medical review panel concurred with that since they found that there were different points in time when it should have been clear to any reasonably competent obstetrician that a emergent cesarean section should be done, and it wasn't.
Right.
But as a practical matter, the state licensing board rarely intervenes and takes disciplinary action for substandard care. That's just, to use a good North Louisiana term, that's rare as hen's teeth.
Hen's teeth, huh? If you drive a car and you run over and kill someone, you're prosecuted criminally.
For negligent homicide.
Yeah. If you're a doctor and you use the surgical tools or whatever improperly and someone dies, you're not prosecuted criminally.
Never seen that done in this state.
Should it be?
In some cases, it most certainly should, in my opinion. And in fact, I have actually taken cases that I thought were outrageous, that went beyond the concept of simple negligence, but went to the point of being outrageous misconduct. But I've never had a district attorney choose to prosecute for that type of behavior.
How do you view your profession and what you do for some of these victims?
Well, in representing patients in the area of medical malpractice, this is a very complicated and complex interaction or interchange between law and medicine. And for me, I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to represent both patients and their families who have been subjected to substandard care. And therefore, I believe that what I am doing really is not merely a profession, it is a calling. And I believe that I'm doing what God called me to do. It is my true belief. And therefore, I perceive this as a type of ministry, quite frankly, and an opportunity to help not only patients and their families, but also to help the medical profession in dealing with physicians who do not live up to appropriate standards. And I want to add that the truly good physicians, the top-of-the-line physicians, are as outraged by poor medical care or substandard care as I am by poor legal representation.
We are fortunate today to have with us the parents of Rebecca, Ryan, and Susan, and we're going to have them on right now. It's my great privilege to introduce Ryan and Susan Gaddy. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the show, Susan. Tell us a little bit about your life. You have 3 children total now, right?
That's correct.
Rebecca is your youngest child. Everything was going smoothly during the pregnancy, and then all heck broke loose, at the hospital. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, I think at some point in the evening, I walked over to Susan, who was in the bed, and she was wearing an oxygen mask at that point. And I asked her if she was ready for the worst case scenario.
You knew already.
Well, I didn't know, but I could tell from Susan's demeanor and the way that she was, in a way, almost non-responsive to what I was saying, that this was not turning out the way that we thought it would. At that point, nurses and doctors started running in and out of the room.
And when did you know the extent of your daughter's injuries?
I believe that night we were not aware, and it may have been a few weeks to even a few months later before we realized how bad her injury actually was to her brain.
Yeah.
And that's because of we having this being our 3rd daughter, we didn't expect. We knew what a 1-month-old would act like. We knew what a 2-month-old would act like, and Rebecca seemed to be within the ranges of what was normal at that point, other than the...
So you didn't really see anything until maybe the 3rd or 4th month?
No, it took us a while to realize she had been down over 15 minutes after she was born.
That's correct.
And then it took us a while to realize what that meant for a long-term impact for her life. So, no, she was an extremely irritable baby.
And she suffers seizures quite a bit, doesn't she?
Yes.
Did you realize what the long-term care would involve, in terms not only expenses but also time-wise?
I've worked with special needs children due to my career for quite some time and always had a lot of respect for family members, but you really can't fully appreciate it until you live it.
And you live it day in and day out, don't you? Do you have help, assistance, 24-hour care?
We have a lot of help.
We do.
We're surrounded by a very good support system.
We have both of our families are here. Susan's mom and dad take up a lot of the extra weight. God blessed us with a lady who's like family now, Miss Kathy. She comes to our house every day at 8 o'clock in the morning and will stay with us if there's a softball game we need to go to or dance class we need to take the other girls to. She's really been an angel.
You have 2 older daughters, is it?
That's correct.
And they help a lot, don't they? How old are they?
Catherine is 9 and Elizabeth is 6.
It makes them understand helping special needs children too, doesn't it?
They're
very sensitive about how special needs children are treated.
And it has changed their view of life, and we really have prayed with them a lot and helped them understand that one day we'll be in heaven with Rebecca, and she will not have these disabilities, and that's been our comfort throughout this entire process. Is not our degrees or or anything that's gone on, but just the prayer and the comfort that God gives us, not only to get through. It's very hard to hold your child when they're hurting.
Yes.
And I experienced that with my older children, but it's very hard to hold your child when they're having a seizure.
Yeah.
And you realize that their brain injury is so significant that they may not ever experience peace in this life. But, God gives us the strength to endure, and then He gives us the grace to forgive this doctor, and then He's given us really the power to grow through this rather than grow apart. Our family's actually closer now than we were before.
Has the doctor ever apologized to you?
No.
No? You sound very religious. You were religious before this. This has strengthened your faith?
There were some things revealed to us, that really helped us through this. I mean, I'm a lawyer. My wife's a PhD psychologist. We understand. We have our own understanding of the way things should happen. Mm-hmm. And that night that this happened, I'll never forget, right after midnight on April the 25th of 2007, Proverbs 3:5 kept coming into my head. Don't rely on your own understanding of this. And that was really peaceful for me. He was going to give us the strength to get through all this. Because without that, I mean,
that's a constant. And there's been financial, emotional, just physical wear and tear that comes with caring for Rebecca, that without that constant, I don't know how anyone could possibly make it through.
One of the reasons that we're doing a show like this is to also show the inequities in the Louisiana medical malpractice laws, which really don't provide the right kind of, monetary award necessary to really take care of folks, or people that have been victims of medical malpractice. What are your viewpoints of Louisiana's medical malpractice laws?
I think that the inequity there is that there's a fictitious limit set. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even aware what the limit was before this happened to us. And it really doesn't take into account the suffering of a small child.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a panel come in Dallas when we saw our doctors at Dallas Children's, because we had to travel there with Rebecca because no one here could figure out why she was still having seizures and how to help her.
Nobody.
And we went to every hospital in the area.
Well, there were only 2 pediatric neurologists locally.
They couldn't pinpoint. They have now. They have pinpointed why she has this pain, constant pain.
The reason that she has the constant pain is because of the severe lack of oxygen that she experienced in the womb that wasn't noticed by the doctor or the nurses or the hospital. Mm-hmm. And that was allowed to go on for several hours. And that resulted in her being born lifeless after a C-section. And she went for almost 15 minutes without a heartbeat. So when you go if any person goes for that long without oxygen, they usually call it and they say we really should stop because the brain injury is so severe this person will just live a life of pain.
Yes.
But in our situation, they did not do that. They continued past what we think is a point of no return. So to answer your question...
Well, I think, we got told when we went to Dallas Neurology is where you started with that. We were told that they would not have resuscitated her if she had been at Dallas. And for the reason that they were seeing while we were there, and that was this significant seizure activity and the lack of oxygen had caused such an injury to her brain that she has such a disorganized brain pattern that she would have infantile spasms, and that's what it would take to show a disruption in her brain pattern because there's really no organized activity within her brain.
Yeah, I guess that what that results in day to day is constant seizures, and it's hard to imagine a child going through constant seizures. And we had her on medicine at 7 months that you and I wouldn't take because the side effects are so bad, but we just really did not know what else to do to comfort her.
There's a lot of muscle tone issues in the seizure activity.
But I don't think that...
But she's a blessing, I mean.
There's no doubt we love her. I mean, she's definitely a big part of our family. She's changed the way that we do everything in a good way. And
she knows those that care for her the most. She recognizes when she's with people that she knows.
But as far as her injury, I mean, I guess the easiest way to explain it is that her brain hasn't grown since she was born.
Wow.
And
It actually died off.
It's actually deteriorated. And although she has grown in length, she hasn't grown much in weight or cognition.
She's almost 2 now?
She's 2.5, and she
2.5.
weighs just over 20 pounds.
20 pounds.
And she is not able to smile, and she has cerebral blindness, so she can't really see.
And our eye doctor said that she could see. Her eyes are perfect. It's just
The connection to the
the
brain.
optic nerve that runs to the occipital lobe of the brain is short-circuited because of the brain injury.
Wow.
So, but I guess to answer your question about the cap, I know that's a long answer, but I mean, what would you sell your child's vision for?
Exactly.
You know, what would you sell your child's brain for? And that's the question I've asked some of my friends, and I said, I'll write you a check right now for your child's brain. And they can't tell me a number. As they start to calculate the number in their head, they say, we'd rather not do this deal, Ryan, and we would rather not do this. And I think that's kind of where we are. There's really no, and I say this kind of loosely because I don't want to make it sound like, this is about finances, but I don't know of any other profession, especially not lawyers or electricians or anyone else, that have a cap on their liability.
Right.
I can't imagine that. So, but I don't think the law takes into effect the possibility of a small child being, basically only being able to feel pain and hunger. That's what our doctors have told us.
Some of the inequity of it is when you recognize that the hospital made more money from her injuries than they paid out as a result of them. It was actually more profitable.
For the care.
Yes. So that's some of the inequity that is.
Well, you folks are the best people to point that out. John, their story is remarkable. It's amazing. It's a day-by-day thing, isn't it?
It really is. It's an example of how the harm just didn't happen on one day. It's a continuing harm that this family will have to deal with 24 hours a day for the rest of their lives. It really is a tragedy.
Yeah, as the amazing, Susan mentioned something real important. When they went to Dallas, the doctors in Dallas said that this baby would not have been a baby that they would have resuscitated.
That's correct.
Because of the brain damage.
One of the interesting issues when I investigated this was that there were highly charged conflicting views among members of the medical community regarding whether resuscitation was appropriate or not. And some of the local physicians felt that you resuscitate no matter what. And the physicians in Dallas had a very different view. And frankly, most of the experts with whom I consulted concurred with the Dallas physicians that there was too much prolonged hypoxia, lack of oxygen, to justify the resuscitation.
Usually you can't, you suffer brain damage when your brain has been robbed of oxygen, deprived of oxygen for, is it 6 minutes?
Well, 3 to 4 minutes can, it depends upon the extent. You have to differentiate between whether there is a total absence of oxygen or whether there is a reduced level of oxygen. And obviously, if it's a reduced level, it takes longer to cause the same amount of brain damage that a sudden total lack of oxygen would cause.
You know, Susan also mentioned, and I'm sure this wasn't the case, but the medical profession has made more money off their daughter, the fact that she's living, than they ever paid out in compensation.
Oh, much. The numbers are huge in terms of the both for her and other clients. When you have cases like this that require continuing care, the long-term medical bills can be literally in the millions of dollars.
In this state, you know, you have a two-part process. You have to go before the Louisiana Medical Board of Review, correct? Mm-hmm. To find out whether it's meritorious, correct?
It's a screening test. The opinion that is rendered is simply a piece of evidence that can be offered into evidence when the case is tried. But it is a preliminary review to help all the attorneys determine whether it's a claim that should be pursued further, dismissed, or settled.
What influence does that have, that opinion, on the jury when it's offered into evidence?
Well, the panel opinion is perceived by most defense lawyers and most healthcare providers as something they really want because they're going to win most of the time.
But what about to the average everyday juror?
The jurors are going to see that as the way it's postured. It becomes an effective tool in the courtroom. So the panel process generally, or most of the time, provides the defense with a piece of evidence that is generally favorable to them. Although I can tell you that virtually every case that I've tried in the last, well, in fact, every case that I've ever tried has been a case where we lost the panel, but then were able to overcome the panel opinion at trial.
It's been a myth that lobbyists for the insurance companies, doctors groups say that because there are increased number of medical malpractice cases, that insurance premiums have gone up. That's not really true, is it?
No, I don't think so. Number one, the data in terms of the number of lawsuits shows that in most states the number of lawsuits is either static, stable, or maybe even in many states actually decreasing somewhat.
Yes.
So the cost of premiums, I think, is more a function of the economy and the manner in which insurance companies invest their money than a result of actual judgments being paid. Certainly in this state, since we haven't had an increase in the cap in 35 years.
And lastly, how do you view your practice, your calling? How do you view it?
Well, I view what I do as more than a job, more than a profession. It is a calling. It is, I truly believe that I'm doing what God called me to do, and therefore I see this as really a type of ministry, a way of reaching both patients and their families and trying to help them through a very tragic time to deal with and to obtain a just outcome.
Well, you are one of the best in the state of Louisiana, and I want to thank you very much for being on our program.
Thank you so very much for being here and letting me be here.
Thank you for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.tv. Thank you.